What's up, everyone? Welcome in to the Breneman Show, college football edition. I'm your host, Adam Breneman, former five-star recruit, former All-American tight end, former football coach at Arizona State. I've done a lot in the football world, current media personality, call games for ESPN, break down football, recruiting, college football, everything on my TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Follow me all over there. And I guess you could call me a current college football analyst and content creator. So this is my podcast. I normally interview people, but we're starting a new segment once a week where I'm going to break down college football and all that's going on in the college football world. So it's going to be once a week. Tune in every single week.
The number one, tight end in the country.
Adam Breneman, tight end, Cedar Cliff.
And then popped up.
Touchdown! Adam Breneman, a 14-yard strike.
Currently, it's November 3rd, Thursday. We're going to talk about the previous weekend of games, which was absolutely wild. And now we are in November, and you guys know when you get to November in college football, all bets are off. Crazy things happen. Things get a little wild. Every game has championship implications. So we're going to break it all down. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to a couple sponsors for this podcast. First of all, Underdog Fantasy, my people at Underdog. It's the best and easiest way to play fantasy sports and to play daily pick'em. Okay, you can play Best Ball Mania. They give away millions of dollars in prize money. You can pick higher or lower on some of your favorite players. You got great odds on there, way better than sportsbook odds. And you can use my code Breneman, and you get your first deposit match up to $100. So a free $100 to use to play fantasy or do pick'em with. So use my code Breneman, download the app. The link's also in the description of this podcast. So shout out to my dogs at Underdog. You like that? Dogs at Underdog. And make sure to show them some support. Also, another big sponsor for this podcast, a great supporter, is Pickett. Pickett is the best app to track your bets and your sports betting plays. Make sure you download the Pickett app. It's also a sports betting social media, so I'll go on there and I'll post stuff all the time, my picks of the week, what I like, what I don't like, and you can track your plays. You can track what the public is on, what the public likes right now, what the public doesn't like, how lines have moved. It's an amazing app, and if you use my code AdamB, that's AdamB, when you sign up, you get a free $3 or $100 free. So $3 or $100, it's like 99 of 100 get $3, 1 out of 100 gets 100. Deposit it onto your Pickett account, and you can link all your sports books and use that money for free. It's a free app. Download it. Use my code AdamB. Show Pickett some support. All right, let's get into a little bit of a recap from last week. Again, it was a wild week in college football. I was at the Ohio State-Penn State game. I was working with Big Ten Network at it. So let's start with Ohio State-Penn State. Okay, Penn State looked like they were in control for a lot of this game at Beaver Stadium. The fans certainly thought it was going to be. It was going to be a Penn State win in the fourth quarter. Penn State's up in the fourth quarter. Place is absolutely rocking. You couldn't hear yourself think. I'm looking around the sideline thinking like this place is going to blow up if Penn State wins this game. The cops were out there surrounding the bleachers, making sure people didn't run on the field. It was crazy. But a few factors in this game. Ohio State obviously wins 44-31. The game was a lot closer than that final score indicates. Somehow Ohio State ends up covering. I think it was 12.5-point spread by the end of the week. Ohio State ends up covering what it didn't seem like they had any chance of covering that earlier in the game. Turnovers were the issue for Penn State. Sean Clifford turns the ball over. Ohio State won the turnover battle 4-0. Penn State didn't have any turnovers. You can't turn the ball over against a team like Ohio State and expect to win the game. The fact that it was even that close with a 4-0 turnover margin is really surprising. And more important than turnovers is how well you score points off those turnovers. Ohio State, 21 points off the 4 turnovers. That's a great conversion rate for Ohio State. It's funny. You look at the box score. Penn State looks like they should have won the game. They had more yards. They had more first downs. They won the time of possession battle, and that's normally when you win those factors, you win the game. But turnovers is the king stat. Penn State lost the turnover battle. You got to find a way to not turn the ball over against Ohio State. 2 interceptions in the first quarter for Sean Clifford. You're not going to win a lot of games when you turn the ball over 4 times, let alone games against Ohio State. So Penn State lets one slip away. It's worth talking about. Penn State in the James Franklin era against top 10 teams. They haven't been good. Now, the reality is top 10 teams are pretty good. You're not supposed to beat top 10 teams, okay? So, like, when we talk about records against top 10 teams, everyone's like, oh, he's 1-10. He's 1-9 against top 10 teams. You're not supposed to beat top 10 teams. You're underdogs in every single game like that. So I think that number gets skewed a little bit, but it's worth talking about. James Franklin, 2-15 against top 10 teams, 1-10 against top 5 teams. I mean, the reality is like 2-15 against top 10 teams, 1-10 against top 5 teams. Like, that's not that bad. Like, you got a couple wins in there. Like, you're not going to beat most top 10 teams, but Penn State fans, administration, and James Franklin, with the money they're now supporting him with, the program, they believe that they should be a top 10 program. And when you believe that, and your fan base believes it, you got to be better than 2-15 against top 10 teams. That's been Penn State's problem. How do you go from great to elite? James Franklin won against Ohio State a few years ago. They lost to Ohio State, and James Franklin went on a rant. And I liked it, and I love James Franklin. He's been great to me. But he went on a rant about saying that Penn State is great but not elite, and they need to close the gap. The gap between Penn State and Ohio State isn't all that big right now, but to close that gap takes so much. The gap between what it takes to go from top 20 in the country to top 10 to top 5 is such a huge gap. It's much easier to go from like the worst program in America to the top 25. Like, that's not a huge gap right there. But to get to the elite teams is difficult, and they just clearly haven't done it yet. Penn State lost to Michigan and Ohio State this season, the two elite teams in the Big Ten. And those are the teams that you got to beat if you're Penn State, if you want to have a chance at winning the Big Ten championship, which I think everyone in that program believes they should. So, but credit to Ohio State. They've done a really good job. Obviously, they're playing elite football right now. C.J. Stroud, that receiver group, Marvin Harrison Jr. look great. I mean, continues to put up monster numbers. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is next up on the long list of those talented Buckeye receivers. He's going to be a late first rounder, in my opinion. And then JT Tumalua. I mean, I've heard like people pronounce his name 7 different ways. So I went on pronunciation.com to look how to say it, and I think it said Tumalua. So we'll see. But if you didn't know his name before, you know it now. He's the former number 1 overall recruit from Washington, and boy, did he look like it. What a recruiting win for Ryan Day, Ohio State. Athletic freak. He just has a knack for finding the football. Was really impressed with JT, as everyone in the country was. Back to Penn State, I think that the thing to talk about is the Penn State quarterback situation. Okay, is Sean Clifford the answer? And that's what everyone's been wondering and been talking about now for the last week since Penn State lost to Michigan. Is he the answer? You have a 5-star recruit, Drew Allar, who's behind him, and I think the fans want to see Drew. And obviously, like, Drew's played sparingly. He's looked good when he's been in there, but sometimes when you have a 6-year senior, this kind of conversation happens all the time. And the reality is, fans don't see all that goes into it. You just see Drew Allard playing 2 snaps on Saturdays and then coming off the bench and then off the field. He looks decent, doesn't turn the ball over. Sean Clifford plays against Ohio State, Michigan in tough situations. Sean Clifford's won big games, and I truly believe that Penn State still thinks that Sean Clifford gives them the best chance to win on Saturdays. Now, this week, James Franklin has been more non-committal than he's ever been about the quarterback situation at Penn State. He talked about in his press conference this week saying, we'll start whoever gives us the best chance to win the game. In the past, that's been Sean Clifford's our quarterback. That's been he's our guy all day. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But the reality is, Sean Clifford in his career at Penn State, 4-11 against ranked opponents. But Sean Clifford's a good football player. He's won big games. He did it. He's done it on the road. He's done it at home. He stands in there and takes hits. The team believes in him. I don't think they move on from Sean Clifford yet, and I don't think they should move on from Sean Clifford yet. They have a chance of having a 10-2 football season, really good season, and for Penn State, and have a chance to play in a New Year's Six bowl game. For Penn State, the other stat I pulled out here that I want to talk about, to get over the hump, they have to find ways to consistently beat the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, Ohio State and Penn State, and they haven't found ways to do that yet. Their win against Ohio State in 2016 came off of that blocked kick that Grant Haley ran back to the house. And they've lost the last 3 out of 5 to Michigan, and lost the last 3 in a row. So So it's definitely not a good situation for Penn State. You got to find a way to beat those teams. And at the end of the day, that's what James Franklin's going to be held accountable to. You got to find a way at some point with all the buy-in in year 7 or 8, whatever it is now for him, you got to find a way to beat those top teams. Let's go to the other game of the week, Kentucky against Tennessee. Tennessee wins 44-6. It was just an absolute bloodbath from the very beginning. And Tennessee stays in the moment, doesn't look ahead to the matchup of the year against Georgia this weekend, which I couldn't be more excited about. But this game was over at halftime. I mean, it was over at halftime. Going into this game, if you followed both teams this season, they play completely different styles of football. Tennessee wants to play as fast as possible and score as many points as possible, essentially getting into a track meet. And then Kentucky wants to play more slowed down style of football. Time of possession matters. Run the ball. Let Will Levis manage the game. And Kentucky wasn't able to do that. Obviously, they couldn't keep up with Tennessee, and it was over from the start. Had some turnovers, which you're not going to win many games with. Despite Kentucky dominating the time of possession, their offense and their turnovers forced their hand. 3 interceptions by Will Levis. Tennessee had 422 yards of total offense. Compared to Kentucky's 205 yards of total offense, not going to win many games with that 200-something yard differential and total yards of offense. This weekend we got UGA against Tennessee in Athens. We'll talk about this more in a little bit, but how great of a matchup is this? You got 2 elite teams, playmakers all over the field. Whoever wins the turnover battle in this game wins the game. Whoever can force 3 and outs wins the game. We'll talk about it here in a little bit. Okay, next game of the week. We had Oklahoma State versus Kansas State. Man, this was an absolute bloodbath. If you would have told me that the Ohio State-Penn State game would be the closest game out of these 3, I would have called you crazy. Kansas State wins 48-0. The Big 12 does what the Big 12 always does. They just cannibalize each other as if there hasn't been an elite team in this conference all season. No, TCU is not elite. The late score on 4th and 1 with 20 seconds left beats West Virginia by double digits. But TCU is not elite. Not elite. There's not one in the Big 12. Oklahoma State was bound to fall again, and they fell as hard as they possibly could. After their performance against last week, I left saying there's no way they win at Kansas State. It took an epic collapse from Texas to win that game, and defense is a major liability. They can't run the football. So when you can't run the football, when your defense is a liability, they barely beat Texas, you're not going to win many games. What's left for the Big 12 now? I mean, that's the real question. What's left for the Big 12? Essentially a 5-team race for the conference championship game in TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Texas. Kansas State versus Texas this weekend is huge for implications of the conference title race. And then you got some other key games in there. You got Texas against TCU on November 12th. You got Texas versus Baylor on November 25th. You got Baylor versus Kansas State on November 12th. You got Baylor versus TCU on November 19th. Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma on November 19th. A lot of big games here that are going to decide the Big 12. Who has the edge? Who has the edge? I think Kansas State has the major edge. If they can beat Texas this week, and considering they have the head-to-head tiebreaker with Oklahoma State, I think Kansas State holds the edge here. But the Big 12 is a mess. It at least makes for some good football games, but clearly they don't have an elite team in that league. Let's move on to Notre Dame versus Syracuse. Notre Dame wins 41-24. Marcus Freeman gets the job done. This really feels similar to Kansas a couple weeks ago in terms to where Syracuse has fallen to. You know, everyone was fired up about Kansas, Lance Leipold, Jalen Daniels, and they're still playing well. But they were the talk of the town. Can they make the playoffs? And now Syracuse falls. Kansas obviously fell in that game a couple weeks ago, and now they haven't been the same since. Syracuse falls off the mountain. We knew it would happen at some point. But can Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame salvage this season? He can, but it won't be easy. And I'll be the first to admit it. I had Notre Dame in my playoff conversation earlier in the season, so that was a wrong pick by me. But Notre Dame has Clemson at home this weekend. This has been a fantastic matchup in the past, and I think Clemson does have too much firepower for Notre Dame. I think Clemson is going to win that pretty easily and handily, but it's a game that's worth watching. It's going to be a great one. So it's worth monitoring what Dabo decides to do at the QB position. So what does he do? Does he go with DJ Iwagalele? I say that right? Let me know in the comments. Does he go with DJ or does he go with the young buck, K. Klubnik? It'll be interesting. All signs point to Clemson going with DJ for this game, but we'll have to find out. And then Notre Dame still has to play USC as well. So USC is a tough one. Obviously, that offense is firing on all cylinders. And if Freeman can win 3/4 of these games and finish with wins in 5 out of his last 6 and finish 8-4 with a roster that isn't all that great, I think it's a pretty good job by Marcus Freeman. And then what's left for Syracuse? You got a potential 10-win season if they win out. 10 wins at Syracuse is elite. That's as good as you're going to get. They play at Pitt, possible win there. They play Florida State, possible win. They're at Wake Forest, possible win if Wake Forest plays like they did that week. And then they got at Boston College. So I think there's a possibility for 10 wins there. But even if they finish 2-2 the next 4 weeks, 8-4 overall, I think Dino Babers is still in a great place to be able to cash out and go to a place like Arizona State or Colorado, get a bigger pay increase, go to the Pac-12, and have some fun. I think Dino's a guy that's really done a good job for his coaching stock this season. Dino's from that area. He's great opportunities, better resources there than you're going to get at Syracuse. I think there's a chance Dino leaves, even if they go 8-4 and takes the payday. All right, guys, if you're like me, you sometimes struggle with the style, what you're wearing, what you're looking like. I'm on camera so much that I always need new suits, new stuff to wear. And the reality is, style isn't like math. There's not one correct answer for everyone. It's about finding what's right for you. And finding the perfect suit can be literally impossible, but finding a suit that's perfect for you is simple, thanks to Indochino. Okay, Indochino is a big supporter of this podcast, and you can choose your favorite fabric and customize every detail to find the look that's perfect for you. Submit your measurements online or get measured in store for a custom made-for-you fit at an incredible price. And with their fall collection featuring new colors and premium fabrics, you'll be in style all season long. I love Indochino. I'm on camera all the time. It's hard for me to find a good suit that fits, that's not extremely pricey and not like a $10,000 suit, $1,000 suits like some of these guys on TV are wearing. I love their suits. I also love their pants and their sweaters and their shirts. They have great products all around. And the great part is, like, I'm a big dude. It's hard to find stuff that fits me right. They're made to order, and the measurements you submit online is elite, and it just gives you the best possible fit, because you don't want stuff that's too tight or too loose. I know so many of you guys struggle with that as well, so I recommend trying out Indochino, and every Indochino suit is made just for you. It's a tailored experience at a great price. I mean, you design a look that suits you perfectly, from the fabric to the cut. You shop their made-for-you suits starting at just $449, and premium fitted shirts starting at just $89. I mean, most suits at this quality would be $1,400, just $449 here. You can fine-tune every detail from monograms, linings, everything. Okay, so you get literally a premium personalized wardrobe without spending a fortune. So design your perfect suit with Indochino. Do me a favor, guys. Support Indochino. They're supporting this podcast, and I love their products. You're hearing it from me. I wouldn't lie to you. Design your perfect suit with Indochino to get $50 off any purchase of $399 or more. Use my promo code ADAMB at Indochino.com. That's my promo code ADAMB at Indochino.com. That's INDOCHINO.com. Promo code ADAMB. Go check out Indochino, guys. Let's talk playoff implications in college football. As I mentioned, every game now is a championship game for these teams at the top of college football. Every game can get you in or out of the playoff. So let's start with the Big Ten. Big Ten is officially a 2-team race, and it comes down to the best rivalry in college football, Michigan versus Ohio State. SEC, 3-team race, okay? And it'll be interesting to see if the loser of Tennessee versus Georgia has an outside shot to make the playoff. I think they will. If it was Alabama or Georgia in this situation, they would make it in, even if they lost. I also believe I believe 3 SEC teams would be the best for the playoffs this season. Potential SEC championship, Bama versus Georgia or Bama versus Tennessee. Both potential matchups would more than likely be top 4 teams. Okay, so the SEC's got a chance there to have a 3-team playoff. I think that's probably the best situation for the championship, to have the best level of teams in the college football playoff. In the Big 12, TCU cannot afford to lose now. If they go undefeated, do they deserve a shot? I think they deserve a shot if they go undefeated. If, and that's a big if, but as I said earlier, I don't think TCU's legit. I don't think they're for real, but if they can pull it off, they deserve a shot. Pac-12, 3 teams with an outside shot at the playoffs. USC, UCLA, Oregon, and then possibly Utah. USC, the key game left is UCLA and a possible conference championship. For UCLA, key game left is USC and a possible conference championship. Oregon has 2 huge rivalry games against Washington and Oregon State, and then Utah. And then Utah, they need help from USC. They have a tiebreaker over USC in conference losses. They need They need USC to beat UCLA, and then Utah must win out to make it to the conference title game. Basically, the winner of the Pac-12 to have a college football playoff outside shot needs plenty of things to happen. Okay, TCU needs to lose a game. Clemson needs to lose a game. The winner of Georgia-Tennessee needs to lose in the SEC championship to Alabama. The winner of Michigan-Ohio State needs to lose to the Big Ten. Needs to lose in the Big Ten championship. These are all unlikely, so the argument is tough. If the top 2 can happen, I think Oregon has the best shot. 1 loss in Week 1 to Georgia. Let's get into my players of the week from this past week of college football. I tweeted out a graphic with like 14 guys on it, but we'll talk about my top guys right now. First of all, Trenton Bourguet from Arizona State was a walk-on, waited his time, took over for Emory Jones as the starter last week. First career start, 435 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Absolutely aired it out. Played at an extremely high level. Was efficient with the football. Did a great job. That offense is way better with Trenton at quarterback. Game ball to Trenton Bourguet. Louisville defense forced 8 turnovers in their upset win against number 10 Wake Forest. They were lights out. Bo Nix, 450 total offensive yards and 6 touchdowns in their game this weekend. Great job by Bo Nix. I talked about him earlier in the season as a guy I thought was going to thrive in this Oregon Kenny Dillingham offense. He's playing at a high level. Will Howard from Kansas State came in for the injured Adrian Martinez, got the start, 4 touchdowns in his first start of the season against Oklahoma State. Great job by Will Howard. Drake May at North Carolina, 440 yards of total offense and 5 touchdowns. Drake May is slinging that thing around. Mac Brown's got to be happy about his quarterback. And JT Tuimoloau. I think I said that different than I said it earlier. Ohio State, 2 interceptions, 2 sacks, forced fumble recovery, pass deflection, which led to another interception. Guy was one of the most dominant defensive performances I've ever seen. Shout out to JT. Let's talk teams of the week. Before we get there, this episode is presented by Members First Federal Credit Union, my friends at Members First. Members First is the best credit union for personal finances, business finances, mortgages, and everything in between. I use Members First for my financial institution. I can tell you from firsthand experience how great their products are, and more importantly, how great their customer service is. I mean, I have multiple mortgages with Members First for multiple properties. The process was so easy, straightforward, and they had the best rates I could possibly find. Make sure you go to membersfirst.org. Check them out for yourself. I appreciate all their support. And I'm telling you guys, I wouldn't lead you wrong. Members First is the best there possibly is for all your banking needs, your personal finances. Go check them out. Appreciate Members First for their support. And I need you all my listeners, to show them some love. Teams of the week. Ohio State. Hard to look past their performance against a top 15 team. I know it was close at times, but they put up 28 points in the fourth quarter to win that game. This team is on a mission. I don't see anything mattering until the Michigan game. Tennessee, rivalry game, potential to look ahead against Georgia. None of that mattered. Tennessee dominates. Kansas State, how can you not be happy for Chris Kleiman and the Wildcats? Huge at-home victory against number 9 Oklahoma State, and they now have an opportunity to finish 10-2 and a chance to play for a conference title. Their only 2 losses to Tulane and TCU. North Carolina, it's time to give Mac Brown and the Tar Heels some love. Remember early on in the season, they lost in that shootout to Appalachian State, or their 45-32 loss against Notre Dame. I barely remember those games. This is a different North Carolina team. There is plenty to play for down the stretch. Their freshman phenom Drake May is balling. They have games against Wake Forest and NC State, 2 key games for them. And then Boise State, they beat Colorado State. Not all that impressive, but the Mountain West is down, and Boise State's taking advantage of it. They've won 6 of their last 7. They've won 4 in a row after that loss to UTEP. 2 major games remain, but if Boise State can win out and reach the Mountain West title game, Andy Avalos will have 10-plus wins in year 2 being the head coach there. He's done a really good job. Let's look forward a little bit and talk a little bit of college football playoff rankings and their implications for the rest of the season. Rankings came out this week. Initial reactions. Tennessee at number 1. Did the committee really want to give Kirby Smart and Tennessee and Georgia some more firepower going into this game? I don't really think they had to do that, but they did. Okay, they did. Tennessee's right where they belong at number 1. Clemson over Georgia. Okay, do you put in the second best team in the Big Ten, or do you put in the worst team or the best team in a bad ACC? They chose a bad team in the best team in the bad ACC. I think Michigan's a better team than Clemson. Not sure they got that one right. Alabama's the highest-ranked one-loss team. Highest-ranked one-loss team, as they should be. There's no other way you could have put Oregon or USC higher than them. And then TCU. TCU, I have no issues with where they were ranked. This is exactly where they should be ranked. And if they go undefeated, I think the committee gives them a nod in the playoffs. Now, who realistically still has a chance? Okay, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Michigan, Bama, TCU, Oregon, USC, LSU. LSU has to win out and win the SEC championship. But those are the teams that have a real chance at it. Okay, who has a chance, but it's unlikely? Ole Miss, UCLA, and Illinois. Illinois has to win out and win their conference title game. UNC also has a chance. They got to win out and win their conference title game. But those are the teams that are still kind of in the mix right now for the playoff contention. Let's talk games to watch this week. Big slate of games. Friday night, Oregon State versus Washington. Got to love some Friday night late Pac-12 action. This game has very little implications on the Pac-12, but it's two well-coached teams with fun styles. I'll be watching this one and expect a good game. Check out for Oregon State's quarterback Chance Nolan and his status. If he plays and he comes back, I like Oregon State to win this one on the road. Baylor against Oklahoma. Two teams that have virtually been written off all season long. This game won't catch the eye of everyone, but there are two teams that are well-coached. They can score points in different style of ways, and two of the better offensive minds in college football in Jeff Lebby and Jeff Grimes. That'll be a fun one. Tennessee against Georgia. The game of the year on paper so far. I mean, no one thought it would be preseason, but what a game we have. We have a top 3 matchup, potentially the 2 best teams in the country. I think Georgia has plenty of media ammunition after not being the number 1 team in the country after those rankings came out. It also feels like Tennessee's rise to fame this year has kind of drowned out the Georgia talk, and Georgia's really played no one since week 1. This is such a fun matchup on paper. I think the biggest key to this game will be how does Tennessee's defense hold up? And I think they can. Okay, watch out the injury report on Kendall Milton. That'll be a big factor. And how does Tennessee stop Georgia's tight ends in Brock Bowers and Darnell? Forgetting his last name, but Darnell, the other tight end. And then how does Georgia slow down Tillman and Hyatt? That's going to be the big test. I think Tennessee covers this game, but Georgia wins. And then we got Bama, LSU. I mean, this is a fun one, too. We got some great games this weekend. The second big SEC matchup, playoff implications and SEC championship implications on the line in Death Valley. Well, we're going to learn a lot about this LSU team this weekend and who they really are. Over the past few weeks, they've looked totally different than the team that played Florida State week 1, and it's all really been led by Jaden Daniels, their quarterback that transferred from Arizona State, ultra talented. I mean, he's playing at such a high level. Let's compare Jaden Daniels to Bryce Young and their numbers, okay? Completion percentage, Jaden Daniels 69%, Bryce Young 66%. Pass yards, Daniels 1,800 yards, Bryce Young 1,900 yards, even there. Rush yards, Daniels 524, Bryce Young 137. Total touchdowns, both have 21. Interceptions, Jane Daniels 1, Bryce Young 3. Jane Daniels is playing at such a high level, not enough people are talking about it. Bama at minus 13.5 feels a little bit hefty, and I've said it all year. I think this isn't the Bama team we're used to seeing. They don't have the offensive weapons, but in this game, the key matchup is can Bama's receivers and tight ends make enough plays down the field against a pretty good LSU secondary and a good LSU defense? Saban's going to have a game plan to keep Jane Daniels in the pocket, so the key is going to be this offense. For Alabama, can they score points? Next big game, we got Texas against Kansas State. We've talked about these two teams a lot lately and talked about the Big 12 implications. Will Adrian Martinez play? That's a big factor in this one. And then what Texas team shows up? And we just don't know what we're going to get from Texas. For Texas to win, the formula is simple here. Based off their last game against Oklahoma State, they need to keep giving Bijan Robinson the ball. Don't stop. The last game, they stopped at halftime last week. Don't stop. All game, feed Bijan Robinson, dominate the running game, and then Quinn Ewers has to connect on those vertical play-action passes when the opportunity's there. Texas is minus 2.5 in this game. That feels like free money. I mean, does Vegas think we're gonna forget what Kansas State did to Oklahoma State last week? They think we're gonna forget what Texas, their misery that they had against Oklahoma State? This line doesn't make sense to me. It's also at home, which is a place that's been tough to play for ranked opponents to get a win in. So I don't think Texas wins this game, and Texas minus 2.5 surprises me. Other games I'm gonna watch: Clemson against Notre Dame. Florida State versus Miami, that'll be a good one. Wake Forest against NC State. Liberty against Arkansas will be a great one. See how Hugh Freeze does there. Oklahoma State against Kansas. Can Kansas kind of get the momentum back in their favor? Last segment we got here. Let's talk gambling and my picks for the week. I give you guys picks all week, and I've been pretty good. 1 and 2 last week wasn't great. I had Washington State at plus 8.5 last week. That was an easy cover. Short week, even though both teams were coming off a bye. Difficult place to play. Cam Rising didn't play. Ohio State versus Penn State, I had under 60.5. Just a disgusting loss. Had 30 points scored through the first 3 quarters, and then 45 points scored in the fourth. Bad beat, great bet. I mean, I was upset about that one. Sorry about that one, guys. And then I also had Oklahoma State, Kansas State over 56.5 points. Might as well call this a bad beat as well. 48 points from Kansas State and 0 from Oklahoma State. Okay, so now this week, here's my picks. UCLA versus Arizona State, over 66.5 points. Both offenses can score it. UCLA has scored 30-plus in every game this year, including 6 games over 40 points. UCLA has given up 30-plus in 4 out of 6 of their games. Arizona State has scored 25 or more in 3 out of 4 games since Sean Aguano took over as head coach. UCLA is 6-2 against the over-under line this year. Okay, and Trenton Bourguet brought the new life to the ASU offense since he was named starter last week. Both games he played in, ASU scored 45 and 42 points. Trenton Bourguet has given that ASU offense new light, over 66.5 points in the ASU-UCLA game. Bama versus LSU. At Bama, I like LSU plus 13.5. Okay, yes, Bama is Bama. I get it, but 13.5 on the road when they aren't nearly as good as they have been on offense as in the past is a must bet for me. I do believe Saban's able to slow down Jaden Daniels on the ground. They force him to make plays through the air, but at the same time, I think LSU's defense is a cut above what Alabama has seen in recent weeks. Bama's 1-2 this season as road favorites. They don't take this number below 12.5 unless. And like for you guys, don't take this number below 12.5 unless you have real confidence in LSU. We're playing with the hooks here, okay? So LSU plus 13.5. Tennessee against Georgia, we're taking Tennessee plus 8. Tennessee plus 8 all day. Whenever you can get an elite offense as the underdog at anything over plus 7.5, you need to really consider it. And Tennessee's offense is the best in the country. They also have a potential Heisman Trophy quarterback, Hendon Hooker. I always go back to the QB in these situations, in these big games. The better quarterback wins. Tennessee's 7-1 against the spread this season. Georgia's without Nolan Smith, their best pass rusher. Watch the Kendall Milton injury, see if he plays. If the line gets down to 6.5 plus, a solid hedge is taking Georgia minus 6.5 with hope of hitting both on a Georgia 7-point victory. It's risky, but it's worth doing. That's the wrap up for this week. Give you guys a little preview, some takes, some college football playoff implications, and my picks for the week. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, subscribe to my podcast. Make sure you're checking this out every single week. We'll be doing it, bringing you a bunch more interviews, and then breaking down college football like I am. Again, Adam Breneman here, former All-American tight end, Power 5 football coach, college football personality, broadcaster for ESPN. I do it all and have a unique voice or a unique perspective on college football. I'll keep giving it to you guys every single week. Appreciate you watching.